Like, not too many people really even realize this. I mean, a lot of people know earthworms as those weird, creepy, crawly things that you find on your driveway after a rainstorm. If it has roots and it grows in the ground, worm castings is a fantastic additive that you can implement to any sort of plant. My father has the upstairs shop where he has all the masonry stuff, and then he is kind enough to give me the bottom section here to do all the worm farming and everything. So my name's Connor Freimuth. I'm the owner and operator and worm farmer at New Compost LLC. It's kind of a fluke to begin with, in a sense. Like, I would have never seen myself as a worm farmer or getting into compost or doing all natural and sustainable practices and raising worms in general. But we were actually based out of Kimberly at the time, and we had some new tenants move into a rental property of my father's, and one of the new tenants that had just moved in just so happened to be a volunteer for a nonprofit called Growing Power in the heart of Milwaukee. It was started by Will Allen, a former Bucks player, where he took a nice 2.5-acre section in the heart of the city of Milwaukee and actually converted it into farmland, where he would do aquaponics, like fish farming. He'd have chickens, goats, everything like that except cows. And the person I met, his name was Robert, just so happened to be in charge of the worm pits there. Always want to be talking about it, always want to be talking about worms. It was the only thing that he would want to talk to you about, because he was actually in line to be selling a lot of worms for live bait for quick trips back in the late 90s, early 2000s, as well as supplying a lot of the finished compost to a lot of the Menards locations here in Wisconsin. So originally, when I had first started New Compost, I was actually simply just utilizing about 3 of these guys. Just 3 simple bins. It was easy enough for me to handle. Wasn't really doing it for the business aspect of it. I was just primarily doing it because it was a nice little hobby. It was a nice little thing to be, not only be able to recycle a lot of my own food scraps, but as well as recycle a lot of friends and family's food scraps, recycle yard waste that might have just ended up into a landfill or ended up being improperly managed and improperly decomposed in, say, like a county landfill situation. Took the opportunity from Robert to learn everything that I could about worm farming and everything like that. I've been doing worm farming for about 8 years now, but I really didn't find the passion to where I am now until about 3 years ago. During those first 5 years, I was just getting my fundamentals down, just figuring out the proper habitats, proper environments, proper feedstock, and everything like that. And I had the opportunity to actually work with one of my local community grocery stores, a Festival Foods in Appleton. And at the time, I was working with my college at the UW Fox Valley Community College, as well as the Fox Valley Technical College, and helping them establish and start a composting bin on the facility grounds in both places. And then, unfortunately, that dream got a little bit ahead of me, because what was unfortunate, especially when it comes to a grocery store, that not too many of us think about, is we started off with about 3 simple 50-gallon garbage cans. They'd fill them up with food for me. I'd come and pick them up, drop them off at Fox Valley and Fox Valley Tech, as well as worm bins, and get them processed, get them all good and dealt with, and I'd return those 3 bins. Well, then all of a sudden those 3 bins then later turned into 6 bins. And I was like, oh man, all right, I gotta start diversifying a little bit more. I can still keep up, I can still manage it. And then 6 turned to 12. And then 12 turned to 24. And then 24 turned to 36. And then I was completely running out of spaces. The Fox Valley Community College, as well as the Technical College, didn't have the grounds and the operations, and neither did I at the time, to handle such a massive load of spent produce. I'd got my first 5-gallon bucket of California red wiggler worms from Growing Power in the heart of Milwaukee, and from there I just kind of ran with it. I've been running with that same exact bin for about the 8 years that I've been doing the worm farm. it's completely grown exponentially, and I've never looked back from that single 5-gallon bucket that I started off with, which was just a simple hope and a dream at the time. But now, like, not too many people really even realize this. I mean, a lot of people know earthworms as those weird, creepy, crawly things that you find on your driveway after a rainstorm. But these tiny little guys are actually real powerhouses. The most fascinating fact to me about doing the worm castings and doing the worm farming is actually the process of building what's called a soil food web, in a sense. So similar to humans, where we have our own micro gut biome, and we have to keep that healthy with a nice diverse range of different organisms that metabolize all of these different nutrients that we eat. Because I mean, let's be honest, when we eat that banana, how is that banana, its nutrients, getting all over our bodies? That's exactly what the worms are actually doing, and they have some of the best biology that you can't find in your typical thermomatic compost heap, where you're trying to get temperatures upwards of 140 to 170 degrees, because they actually have different organisms that live and reside on the outside as well as the inside of their own guts. The thing is, anybody can compost, and it's great that a lot of people do compost, but what a lot of people don't realize is if you do composting improper, if you aren't getting those adequate temperatures of that 140 to 170 degree range, you're not killing a lot of those bad pathogens that might be residing. That's your E. coli, that's your salmonella, that's your C. diff, a whole bunch of what are called anaerobic bacteria. Whereas what's very cool about the earthworms is, similar to birds, they have what's called a gizzard that actually grinds up their food, because they don't have the teeth that we do to grind up our food. So whatever fits in that tiny little mouth of theirs, whether it's a good bacteria or bad bacteria, they can actually consume it and completely eradicate it, and on the tail end of the worm come out with some of the biologically best compost material that you can use on any soil medium, whether it be your clay soils, your sand soils, your loam soils. And what's very interesting is not only the biology that you're implementing when you are utilizing something like worm castings, they actually help fix their soil structure. The worms are kind of the engineers. Even their own manure is kind of the engineers of their own environment. So a lot of people, especially here in Wisconsin, we have to deal with that lovely lumpy, clumpy clay soil, to where you can easily take a scoop out of the dirt and just start rolling it in between your hands where you have that clay snake, or you can use that clay to make a little vase or something like that. Worm castings can actually improve the soil quality of it, taking that what would be easily compactable, easily compressed clay, and actually make it into a nice, crumbly, loomy soil, as well as adding and implementing all of the different trace nutrients for any sort of plant cultivation, whether it be your lawns and landscapings, trees, to even as small as a little succulent or a cactus in a nice potted plant or house plant, or in your veggie gardens, as well as your fruit trees and everything. So it's mostly e-commerce right now. It's a little bit of here and there, getting into a couple local farmers markets, local pop-up shows, but now it's really gradually starting to pick up, especially since I'm getting a lot of backing from the Fox Valley Technical College. See, I've been working with them for about 5 years and supplying them some of my worm castings as well as my worm casting liquid, which is called worm casting extract, which is simply just take worm castings and you just simply put it into solution or water, and then you're extracting all the nutrients as well as all that beneficial biology off of the castings into water, and then you can utilize that as a soil drench, as a foliar spray, as well as a hydroponic additive that the Fox Valley Technical College has actually been doing with me for about 5 years. The 5 years I've been working with the Technical College, my product, what I like to call Gold Rush Plant Probiotic and Booster, has beaten out any sort of big name brand, organic, all natural product, as well as synthetic chemicals. And what's very interesting is usually you have a little baseline reading, but because of my process and what I've been utilizing and implementing into my own worm bins to try and reach the biologically best and complete vast array of biodiversity in my compost and my worm castings. This allows me to not have to show those big numbers, because whenever we look at plant ingredients, we're always looking for those three big numbers: your nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus, your NPK. And that's what sometimes turns people away, is that's such a low number. But what a lot of people don't realize is when they are utilizing a lot of these high number fertilizers, a lot of it, for the stuff that doesn't leach out and go into our waterways and our rivers and streams and stuff like that, they actually hold on to some of those nutrients, but the thing is, your plant can't utilize it. So when you are utilizing something like my worm castings, you're adding those beneficial life, that beneficial biology back into the soil system that you would find in, say, an old growth forest ecosystem. When we go drive past a nature center or a national park or anything like that, you don't see a fertilizer truck go through there. And so how does it do it? And that's just nature. It's biology. But what makes it a complete soil food web is you also have to have microscopic predator species in the compost as well that will actually consume and digest and then poop out, releasing those nutrients into a plant's available form. Just one giant circle of life, really. About 2 years ago, I started beefing up production. 3 turned into 6, and then that 6 became a little easy to manage, but then all of a sudden more demand started growing, especially when I started to get the word out and educate people about the importance and the impact and the benefits of utilizing worm castings to help them replace a lot of your synthetic chemical fertilizers and pesticides. But then next thing you know, 6 turned to 12, and then 12 turned to 15, and now I'm utilizing as much space as I can in a little garage that me and my father built on his property. Once the job's done, I always like to say congratulations on your new living lawn or your new living garden, because that's what you're doing, is you're adding life back into it. See, when we utilize a lot of these chemical fertilizers, we're kind of making our plants lazy in a sense. We're kind of putting them in a nook. We're kind of just force feeding them like these nutrients that we expect them to grow. But once we implement biology back into the soil, then your plant actually has to start making decisions. When you add biology back into the soil, when you add those microorganisms back into that soil, the plant actually takes hold of it and says, listen, I need you to do me a favor. So I need you to go fetch me some calcium, I need you to go find me some nitrogen, some phosphorus, magnesium, and iron. And if you do that, then I will give you some of my sugar that I create through photosynthesis to help feed you if you can do me this favor. And when you add biology back into your soil, it's basically the equivalent of adding your truck drivers and your forklift operators and your essential supply chain back into your soil system, in a sense. When we are utilizing synthetic chemical fertilizer, we are utilizing some sort of herbicide, pesticide, fungicide, anything like that, something that kills that beneficial life. Unfortunately, it's a lot easier for those bad guys to come back. It's actually those disease-causing organisms that reign supreme and are allowed to start coming up. We need to stop taking the easy way out and actually start, and this is the step that I'm trying to take, start working with like-minded individuals who are doing stuff like organic farming or regenerative farming, helping to cultivate the foundation, cultivating the soil. And how they're doing that is implementing these soil food web methodologies, and by implementing beneficial biology back into the system, that actually helps, makes it less likely and suppresses any chance of some sort of plant pathogen getting into it. You've heard of some farmers actually dealing with a fungus that a fungicide or even a fungicide coated seed can't even deal with. But since you don't have those beneficial organisms to outcompete those bad organisms that will simply just kill or eradicate your plant, then they're a lot more susceptible, and then you do start seeing complete crop failures of farms of over 100 to 1,000 acres. The farmer that I'm actually working with, he has 4 generations of farmers working on that same plot of land that he's working on to this day. He can recite me stories of times where he's seen his grandfather going through the field with the strip tiller, tilling up the soil, and then seeing a complete, like a cloud of seagulls coming in right behind that tilling or that tiller to come and eat up a lot of that earth, a lot of those earthworms, and a lot of those some good microscopic arthropods in the soil. He says, "Yeah, but that was about 40 years ago now." As a mason, working with my father, helping to build block foundations and concrete wall foundations, and making sure that that foundation, that base, is set in stone and will hold up and create something beautiful and have like a beautiful home built on top of it, and cultivate something beautiful, something that will have memories, something that we will experience joy from. And that's what I want to take with new compost, except not just for house foundations, but the foundation for life, which is the soil. Because what I like to say is, you can't, if you want to grow a healthy plant with no disease, no problems in it, and it's producing and it doesn't have some sort of a root problem or stem problem where your fruits just start rotting on the vine or anything like that, you need to fix your soil. A healthy plant starts with healthy soil.